All right, Miss James's kiddos, we are going to dive deeper into nonfiction narratives, specifically the different elements and different structural elements of those nonfiction narratives. Yesterday, we read our launch text of Unit 1 with the rites of passage, and we read Red Roses. And in that particular text, we had Lila, our narrator and main character, who went through and experienced a significant rite of passage in middle school, which was, thinking of somebody else's feelings before yourself. And that's huge in middle school because even though we don't like to think about it, middle schoolers tend to be very about themselves as opposed to about others. So that was very big for her. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to learn about the different elements of a nonfiction narrative, and then we're going to actually identify 3 in the text from yesterday, Red Roses. So by the end of today, you should be able to identify characterization, descriptive details, and reflective conclusion within Red Roses. So let's get started. What is a nonfiction narrative? I want you to think about this. What do you think it is? And there's going to be an opportunity for you to type in your response. Your response is going to count for points for the day, so please make sure that you type out a full response so that you get your full points. So I will let you guys go ahead and jot down your thoughts now. So a nonfiction narrative, I hope what you said was that it's something that actually happened. Yesterday I talked very briefly about that idea of nonfiction. Nonfiction means it's something that did happen. A narrative is a story. So again, a nonfiction narrative is a story that tells about a person's experiences, and normally it just focuses on one. So yesterday, again, we read about Lila's experience of getting a dozen red roses from the weirdest kid in school and having to be, what we call the bigger person and take those red roses to avoid, making fun of the young man that was considered weird by everybody, Derek. Before we dive into the elements, I do want to talk about some academic vocabulary that our Savvis platform is going to be expecting you guys to know, and it's going to help you better understand nonfiction narratives. So there's 4 steps to this, and you're going to complete all of this in this Ed puzzle. First, you're going to review each word, its root, and the mentor sentences provided. A mentor sentence is just a sentence that uses the word within it. Then you're going to use the information and your own knowledge to predict the meaning of the word and list at least 2 related words. If you need help, you should always refer to a dictionary or another resource if necessary. So let's go ahead and get started. Your first word is attribute. And the specific root within attribute is trib. And that root means give. So knowing what we know about the root trib now, meaning give, okay, and these 2 mentor sentences, I attribute my success to hard work. And people attribute this song to Bill, but actually Shayna wrote it. What do you think the word attribute means? Go ahead and take a minute, and I would like for you to pick from the multiple choice what you think that word means. All right, hopefully you selected associating a thing with something or someone. It is a verb. It's something that you do. It's kind of like giving credit to something. Now, what I want you to do is take a second. Now that we know the actual meaning of the word, I want you to think of some possible related words. They could contain the root trib or have a similar meaning to the word attribute. So again, take a minute and think of 2 to 3 related words that tie into or connect to attribute. Your answers might be different. What I came up with was attribution or distribute. Because we know with distributing something, it means to give something away. If I distribute books, I'm giving books to somebody. All right, next word. We've got gratifying, and the root within gratifying is grat, and that means thankful or pleasing. So our mentor sentences are: it was gratifying to get an A on the test after studying all week, and getting praise from her coworkers for a job well done was gratifying to Lisa. So again, take a minute based off of the word, any background that you have on it, the information about the root that we just provided to you, and those mentor sentences. Go ahead and predict your meaning. And hopefully you came up with pleasing or satisfying. Now that we know the actual meaning, I'm going to have you come up with a couple, meaning two. And if you're feeling kind of gutsy, you can go three. 2 or 3 related words. Remember, it can be tied or connected to gratifying, or maybe it has that same root grat in it. All right, some that I came up with were grateful and gracious. All right, next one, persistent. This is probably a word that you already know, but the root that's within this word is sist, which means to stand. So the East Coast experienced persistent rain for days, and the dogs barking from inside the house was persistent. So based on our background knowledge, the root and what it means, and these mentor sentences, what do you think persistent means? If you said continuous, determined, and tireless, you are correct. Now, 2 to 3 related words. Persist, exist, and resist. Persist actually is the root within the root word within persistent, and it means to continue, to be determined, or to be tireless. Exist means to be, which if we're tying it into stand, if you're existing, you're standing your ground, you're there, and resisting, it makes me think of like resisting arrest, resisting authority. It means, again, you're kind of standing your ground. You're not letting that happen. All right, notable. The root, note, means a mark. So Miss Smith's garden was notable for its bright flowers, and the book club asked a notable writer to speak to their group about his achievements. So background, the root, the mentor sentences, what do you think it means? If you thought important, remarkable, or worthy of attention, you are correct. Now, how about some related words? 2 to 3. What can you come up with? Notation, annotate, what we did yesterday, and keynote. When a notation is a note on a sheet of paper. Same thing, annotate is the act of taking notes. A keynote speaker is somebody who is very important, the main speaker, somebody who's mark-worthy. And we've got inspire. You guys probably know this one. Spire is the root, and spire means to breathe. So our mentor sentences are: this poster will inspire people to vote. And if you want to inspire me, you'll have to say something positive about my work. So what do you think inspire means? All right, to generate feelings or thoughts in someone. If you had something similar to that, you are correct. Now that we know the meaning, let's tie in some related words. Remember, it can connect to the word itself, or it can have the root spare in it. All right, I came up with inspiration, spirit, and respiration. And the one I love, love, love is respiration. It makes me think of science, which is the act of actually breathing. All right, moving on. We're going to go ahead and go into those elements of nonfiction narratives. There are several We are only going to focus on, if you think back to our success criteria, 3, because this is just the very beginning. And again, we're just kind of dipping our toe into the water. We're going to continue to look at nonfiction narratives throughout the rest of Unit 1. So I'm going to tell you about all 6, but we're only going to focus on 3. Okay, so one of the main ones is characterization of people who play different roles in the event. We've got the description of the impact of the event on the different people involved. A clear sequence of events that unfold naturally, which is something that you guys have been working on since you've been writing narratives. Narrative techniques such as dialogue, description, and pacing. Again, something that you have been working on since you've been writing narratives. Transitional words and phrases, something that you work on anytime that you write. Descriptive details and powerful sensory language, and then a conclusion reflecting on the experiences in the narrative. So, 7 different elements. But again, we are only focusing on 3. And those are the characterization of people who play different roles in the event, descriptive details and powerful sensory language, and then a conclusion that reflects on the experience in the narrative. So, first up. Characterization of people who play different roles in the event. All that is a fancy way of saying describing characters using actions, dialogue, and effects on others. Writers use characters' actions to tell us about the character. They use a character or characters' dialogue to tell us about a character. They use, the effects that people have on others to describe characters. So, a quick example. Leah was an ambitious young woman who wanted to become successful. What do we learn about Leah as a character from that sentence? I'm going to ask you to jot your ideas down right now. All right, so if you said that we learned that she was ambitious, she was also young, okay? She wanted to become successful. I mean, it's clear as day in this example. Not every example is like this, but again, characterization is just describing characters, letting you know who they are. Now, descriptive details and powerful sensory language, something that you're probably familiar with, but I think it's very important, which is why we're focusing on it. So with descriptive details and powerful sensory language, I have an example for you, okay? Because what we're trying to do is paint a picture for the reader. So the young boy raced down the aisle of the store as if a vicious animal was chasing him. Sweat saturated the brim of his Orioles ball cap as the owner screamed, "Get back here!" Within that example, I want you to jot down some descriptive details and powerful sensory language that you found in that piece. Give me 2 to 3 words or phrases, descriptive details, or powerful sensory language. It painted a picture for you. You could see it happening. All right, hopefully the words that stood out to you were raced down the aisle of the store. That idea of racing kind of gives you an idea of how quickly he was going, as if a vicious animal was chasing him, okay? That's powerful sensory language. Sweat saturated the brim. Saturated. I know there's a lot. As the owner screamed, the word screamed lets me know how loud it is. Good, guys. All right. Elements of a nonfiction narrative. Last but not least, we've got our conclusion that reflects on the experience in the narrative. So this type of conclusion really addresses a theme or a lesson that was learned. So it might read something like this. Although learning to ride a bike was exhausting, Janae realized that patience and perseverance were essential in learning something new. So based on that conclusion, what do you guys think is a theme or a lesson that somebody who is reading this story might have learned based off of that conclusion? All right, I hope you guys picked up on the idea of patience and perseverance being essential. So, as I had mentioned before, we're learning about those elements of nonfiction narratives, and we're going to identify 3 in the text. So, we just learned about them. It was very quickly, okay? But now we're going to move on. We're going to see if you can identify some characterization, some descriptive details, and that reflective conclusion within Red Roses. So, can we do it? We are going to do this together. So you've reached the end of our Ed puzzle, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with when we come back all together. Awesome job.